We've been doing fruit and vegetable seed saving for about 3 years now, so that we can provide local heirloom seed varieties for folks who are looking for things that do well in Flagstaff. So everything that we collect seed from is grown in Flagstaff, so we know that they are things that are going to do well here. So if you're just starting to get into seed saving, there's a lot of things that you're going to need to do just some easy research on. I'll go ahead and link in the description below the chart that the Seed Savers Exchange has that shows you how far apart you need different plants to be in order to prevent cross-pollination. So that's kind of the biggest thing. If you're going to be doing seed saving, there are two things that are really important. Number one is making sure that you're not having things cross-pollinate with one another if you don't want that. If you're interested in experimenting, it's always fun to do that, and you can see what new varieties you can breed yourself. But generally speaking, if you have a nice plant variety that you want to grow for years to come, then you need to make sure that it's not going to cross-pollinate with other varieties that you're growing. The other thing is to make sure that whatever you choose to grow is an heirloom seed variety. So that just means that it's not hybridized, which doesn't mean that it's GMO or anything. It just means that the offspring of that plant, you're not going to know what you're going to get, because their parents were very different from one another, and the seeds just don't breed true. So heirloom varieties, they have been bred for generations to stabilize their characteristics, meaning that if you keep that seed going, then you're going to have very similar crops that come from them. So for us, for our strategies for isolation, the easiest way to do it is to probably just grow only one variety of something. And keeping in mind that your neighbors might be growing a different variety near enough by that they could cross-pollinate. So make sure that you kind of have a general idea of how close other varieties are growing to yours. And maybe start out with something that's really easy to do that with. So like beans, there are people who will collect seeds that are bean varieties that are grown right next to each other because they are unlikely to cross-pollinate. Then something like squash, you're supposed to keep it, I think, like half a football field or a football field away from another variety to prevent cross-pollination. And you can end up with some things like squash, you can end up with crosses that are not edible, that have like toxins in them. Not that you would not notice. It would be something that you would bite into it and it would not taste like an edible thing. So those are things to keep in mind. So go ahead and, like, whatever you're thinking you want to experiment with seed saving, just take a look at how far away it needs to be grown from other varieties and see if that's possible for you to do in the area that you're in. If it's not possible and you're not going to be selling the seed, so if you're just doing this for yourself, for fun, you can go ahead and use these bags to cover the flowers of whatever it is. These are just like the plasticky party favor bags. You just use that to cover the flower of whatever it is, the squash or the tomato or the pepper. When it first opens, you'll want to go ahead and cover it, hand pollinate it yourself, and then once it has set fruit, so once it drops the flower off of it and the fruit begins to develop, you can go ahead and take this off, so that you don't have your fruit start to rot. And that seed will most likely not be pollinated by something else. But if you're gonna try and sell the seed, then you'll really want to make sure that things are fully isolated, so that you're not selling seed to folks where they're putting a lot of effort into growing something and then ending up with something completely different. So it's really nice to do seed saving yourself, because you can save seed for a single season, from a single season that's going to last you for years to come. Most seed will, even though on the packages it says, for this season, most seed will retain most of its viability for a decade or more. and some things longer than that, like beans will keep their viability for a really long time. So if it's not a huge inconvenience, it's really cost-effective way to have plenty of seed for a long time. It also is a way of kind of like giving back to the idea of preserving heirloom seed varieties. And you can also kind of experiment with breeding yourself. So if you're living in a specific area, say Flagstaff, and you have particular plants that do better than others, then you can select those, and then over the years, if you continue to collect seed, then you can help them adapt to the area that you're in. And that can happen pretty rapidly, actually. Like within a few years of doing that, you can end up with something that is slightly different or very different from what you started with, just because you're selectively breeding it yourself. So here's a sneak peek into next year's seed availability. So we're growing Black Beauty zucchini for seed. We live probably 4 miles away from the nearest other person growing any sort of squash. So that's why we're able to do this. Since squash needs to be separated pretty well. We're also growing, and I'm not sure if we'll get seed off of this year or not, but we're also growing Armenian cucumbers, and we're able to do that next to the squash, since cucumbers and squash will not cross-pollinate. We do also have proper cucumbers, so these are technically melons, and this is something that's, you need to know what will and will not cross-pollinate with one another. So we do also have a different variety of cucumber, and since Armenian cucumbers are technically melons and not technically cucumbers, even though that's the way that we use them and that's what they look like, we're able to grow two cucumber-ish varieties